George Russell has won the Canadian Grand Prix in a race which has got not really the Russell effect that you'd like, because McLaren will be dominating all of the headlines after Lando Norris might have scuppered his championship hopes by running into the back of his teammate Oscar Piastri down the pit straight. We've got Tim Kraaij at GPBlog to go through everything through the Canadian Grand Prix, and well, let's be honest, Tim, it's taken a while to get this result. Everybody probably watched the race, saw George Russell win, saw Lando Norris crash, and then thought, well, that was good. I went to sleep. And then you have the psychopaths in the media who waited 5 hours, that's right, to go through all of the FAA documents. But let's talk about McLaren. Lando Norris crashes into his teammate, the cardinal rule that you should never break, and owned up to it pretty quickly. But this looked like a bit of a, you said brain fart about Leclerc on Friday. This looked like another brain fart in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, stupid. He called it himself. So yeah, we can use those words as well without hurting him. I would say it was a silly move. You felt it coming a little bit before the start of the weekend. I said at the Dutch podcast we have as well. Like it could be a weekend where it finally happens with those two, and it did. Although it didn't happen in the quite spectacular fashion that you maybe have imagined it, because it wasn't really a clash between the two, but it was just Lando slamming in the back of his own teammate. It was a very silly move, and I think the ironic part is he had so much overspeed at that point that even if he went along the outside, I think he could have made it, because with teammates, look, if he would have been on the outside of Max Verstappen for turn one, I think he couldn't have made that move stick. But with your teammate, Oscar, I think should have given him a little bit room into turn one. So I think on the outside, he would have made that move. But if you look at the race, it's quite strange as well, because Oscar didn't seem to have it. Oscar didn't seem to have it the whole weekend. Don't forget, he had a troublesome Friday. He had the incident on Saturday morning. So he wasn't really there this weekend. It should have been a session where a race weekend where Lando could have taken back some points from Piastri, but then he messed up his qualifying. First of all, he drove a good race. He cut to the back of Oscar Piastri without a safety car, so he drove an insane good race. But then to just drive into his teammate who had been slower the whole weekend is just a big mistake, and it shows again that Lando is maybe still a little bit quicker than Oscar, but he can't tie it all up together in qualifying, and he makes too many mistakes like this, like he did again now on Sunday.
It doesn't seem that long ago, Tim, that we were talking about the press conferences you go to with Andrea Stella and just how impervious they felt, that the McLaren were not necessarily unbeatable, but very much in control. That sort of feeling this weekend doesn't seem to be there at all. McLaren were on the back foot, like you said, with Piastri struggling and Norris not topping the timesheets at any point. And I wonder, McLaren and Norris in particular, is this their chance that they've had to really nail the advantage they've got? Because this suggests to me that Mercedes might be back and Verstappen is clearly quick. If Norris is losing points like this, is he going to lose the championship as he missed his potential chance to maximize the points that he could get?
I think it's a strange situation, and George Russell said it afterwards in the press conference. He was quite surprised that they are still that close, that he and Max are still that close, even while everyone knows that the McLaren is so dominant. But for some reason, it feels like almost every weekend we see one of the two McLaren drivers, or sometimes both. I think this weekend it was both, not getting the maximum out of their car. And I think it shows how good, like the period with Lewis was with Mercedes. It shows how good Max Verstappen was with Red Bull, because it's not that easy to perform every weekend, even though you have the fastest car. And I think Lando Norris back in the day made a comment about Lewis Hamilton, he should win every race. I think this shows how tough that is to win every race, even though you have the quickest car. And I think that's something that both McLaren drivers struggle with at the moment, and especially Lando, with that pressure of really needing to perform every race weekend, seems to be a thorn in his side at the moment. And I was surprised as well with how quickly he already acknowledged that it was his mistake, because like for normal drivers, it's very normal to have the first reaction like, oh, it's someone else, it's the wall, it's the groundhog, or it's Oscar's fault. I really like the guy Lando, but this feels a little bit yeah, like a red line across his whole career so far, and it feels like the title is slipping away from him. But if he all ties it up back together, it is still possible for him to win the championship because the gap is still very close. So it's all down to him.
It does feel like it's still there's to lose rather than anything else. But let's talk about the contenders, I suppose we can call them, because the George Russell, Max Verstappen saga, it just continues to give and give and give. Obviously, Spain was such a flashpoint in it, and all the drama that came after it. They seem to be almost amicable to each other, surprisingly, in all the media stuff I've seen this weekend. They've been in the top two, and top two again today, but not without any sort of discussion points, because the reason we're recording so late, Red Bull lodged a protest because of George Russell allegedly brake testing. Therefore, I say that's not the case. But is this gamesmanship? Was George Russell potentially trying to psych out Max with this penalty point situation? What was going on?
Yeah, to be honest, I found it to be a little bit of an overreaction to make this a protest. Maybe it's because I'm a little bit frustrated that we're now 5 hours in and now we do the video. I still think it's amazing that a big sport like F1 can take 5 hours after the race at a point where a lot of people are already sleeping or at least are already checked out. We still haven't got the final results in. I think it's ludicrous. It doesn't belong in a big sport like this. And we've spoken about the FIA in lengths over the past couple of weeks as well. And the stewards were an example this weekend again. And I think this is not up to standards of top sport and the billion dollar business F1 is. It doesn't make sense at all. But that put aside, I think it was a little bit of an overreaction. I think there was nothing wrong with what George did. It was a little bit fast break and complaining about Max, but yeah, Max complained about George as well. I think it's all a little bit complaining about each other. And I think Joylan Palmer always has the saying like just get on with it on F1 TV. And I think I had that with this. I thought there was nothing there, and I didn't understand the whole protest, and I didn't think it would stand a chance. And yeah, that made the 5 hour wait a little bit more frustrating as well. But yeah, overall, I think George and Max were quite realistic about it. Max didn't make a big point out of it as well. Christian Horner made that point as well in the press moment afterwards, that it was not Max that had push the team towards his decision to push for a fine or anything. So it was the team's decision. They had a window of opportunity to protest it. They tried and it failed.
I failed the fans as well, I'd say, after all this. Thanks so much, Red Bull. That's very kind of you. Let's focus on this final point then with George and Max. They seem to be very interlinked at the moment, and we've had speculation since last year and now this year with what's going to happen with Verstappen. Will he go to Mercedes? And of course, Russell's now winning a race, but his future still seems to be a little bit uncertain.
Yeah, he doesn't have a contract for next year. That's quite solid. So he needs a contract. He's quite certain of himself that he will drive an F1 next year. And I think, from the information that we have, even though there is an exit clause in the contract of Max Verstappen, he already decided to stick to Red Bull Racing for the coming year. So I think Mercedes will stick with George. He's making big improvements this season, really stepping up as the leader. They have Kimi next to him, who's impressive as well, and he was very good alongside George this whole weekend, taking his first podium in Formula One. So very good for Mercedes overall. And so I don't think George has to worry a lot about it. I think he was very clear in the presser afterwards as well, saying that he understands that Mercedes and every team on the F1 grid would talk with Max Verstappen if the opportunity is there. And he understands that the team takes a little bit more time to see if Max comes available. So I think he's quite reasonable in that. And he knows as well that if Max joins Mercedes, that other opportunities will open up. But he didn't speak to other teams so far, and he's fully committed to Mercedes and hopes he can extend his contract there. And don't forget, every Mercedes junior driver, just like George Russell, is already under management of Mercedes. So if he wants to move to another team, they have to go by Mercedes. So that's always an interesting situation.
I think Russell's probably going to be set where he is, especially with this result. Great result for him and the team. And big congratulations to Kimi Antonelli. What a result. And only fighting off the championship leader and the two dominant cars behind him to make that his podium as well. So it was a great race in the end. It'll take a little while for us to talk about it, but we'll get over it by the next time we're doing a paddock update. So thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll see you next time when we've got the Austrian Grand Prix.